Next.js 15 has finally been released and is offering some awesome improvements. I'm not going to waste any more time, so let's jump in and look at my top 5 changes and features in Next.js 15. So the first big change is one that's been a long time coming, and it solves a massive pain point that many have had with Next.js for a while, and that is that the caching behavior is now opt-in rather than opt-out. Previously, the default get route handlers and the client router cache were cached by default, but now they're all uncached by default, and then you can opt into the caching instead. So in Next.js 14, in this route here, this would have been cached by default. So on the first request, the data is fetched from the example.com endpoint and is cached, and then on second and subsequent requests, the cached data would be served. You could find a way to get this to be dynamic if you wanted to by doing force dynamic. This is essentially all reversed in Next.js 15. The route won't be cached by default here, so it will refetch the data from example.com, but now we can opt in and force it to be cached instead by using this force static. The same thing is also applying to the client router cache. It will no longer cache page components by default. So here in Next.js, as we navigated the app, the page segments here would be cached, and so would the layout and the loading.js. So you can see if I go back to a page here that I've visited, it serves back the same cached time. Now in Next.js 15, every time that you go and visit a page, you get fresh data instead from the page component, but don't worry, it's not going to make your app slower, as your layouts don't need to reload, the browser back and forward still uses the cache to ensure scroll position restoration, and loading states are all still cached as well. You can change all of this behavior too, so if you wanted to get the old way back, you can just add this to your next configuration. Next up, we have React 19. React 19 is all about server components, and if you use Next.js, I'm sure you've used these by now as well. Next has been using server components from the Canary versions of React, but it's now aligning with React 19 for the app router. Now, as I said, Next.js has been using a lot of features from React 19 for a while now, but let's start with the new exciting one, the React compiler. This is a new experimental compiler created by the React team. The compiler understands your code at a deep level through its understanding of plain JavaScript semantics and the rules of React. Essentially, this allows you to add automatic optimizations to your code. The benefit of this being that you don't have to use memo or use callback as much anymore, and this should help make your code simpler, easier to maintain, and less error prone. Another awesome feature of React 19 as well is better hydration errors. Now, you may have had the pain of dealing with this in Next before, when the server and the client don't agree. Previously, the error messages haven't been great in pointing out exactly what went wrong, but in Next.js 15, hydration errors now display the source code of the error with suggestions on how you can address the issue as well. If you want to find out more about what's new in React 19, check out the video I made on it 7 months ago. That shows just how long this has been in the works, but also here's a quick screen on all the new important features. Feel free to pause the video here and give it a quick read. Now, next up, we have TurboPack. TurboPack is now stable and it should improve your Next development server. All we have to do is run next dev turbo. Vercel created TurboPack because Webpack was becoming too slow for modern web development needs, and after evaluating the existing solutions, they decided to build a new bundler from the ground up to better handle Next.js's requirements. If you've been following the development of this, you would have seen the site Are We Turbo Yet? It reports all of the tests that are passing, and as you can see on development, they all pass, and there's a little bit more to go for production. Vercel reports that on their Next.js site, vercel.com, they've seen a 76% faster local server startup time, 96% faster updates with fast refresh, and 45% faster initial route compilation without caching. Feature 4 is experimental but really cool, and that's the new After API. When you're processing a request, sometimes you want to add extra tasks like logging, analytics, and other things, and although this doesn't actually matter to the end response, you may have had to wait for these functions to finish before you could go ahead and return something, as deferring tasks wasn't really possible before in a serverless environment. After, though, is the new experimental API that's going to solve this problem, and it allows you to schedule your work to be processed after the response has finished streaming, enabling secondary tasks to run without blocking this primary response. This is just a really cool developer experience enhancement. The fifth great feature is a new component, the form component. This component extends the HTML form and adds in great new features like prefetching, client-side navigation, and progressive enhancement. If you wanted to do this before, you would have had to create your own form component like this one, but now we can simply use Next Form, and as you can see, that's going to make our code a lot cleaner, and again, it's a really nice developer experience enhancement. There we go, that was my top 5 features, but let's see some extra ones quickly. I'll leave a link to the announcement blog post in the description down below, but there is a couple of other cool ones that I want to point out as well. So this is the announcement blog post here. As you can see, Next.js 15 is officially stable and ready for production. You can actually go ahead and run this command here to automatically upgrade your code base to Next.js 15 where possible, or you can go ahead and just upgrade manually by installing the latest packages. And you can see all of the features here. We've already covered a few of these. We covered the caching semantics, React 19 support, TurboPack Dev, unstable after, and also the new enhanced forms. A few other features I want to point out is the async request APIs here, as it says it's breaking. Essentially, your cookie functions, your header functions, and these other ones are going to be asynchronous now. This is just to set the stage for future optimizations, but that's one thing to be mindful of. If I go back to the top though, another one I'm really excited about is this static indicator. As it says now, Next.js now displays a static route indicator during development to help you identify which routes are static or dynamic. This is just going to be a really nice visual cue for you to easily optimize your application by seeing really clearly what is static and what is not. So again, a nice developer experience enhancement there. If I scroll back up to the top though, there is another really cool one I want to point out, which is this instrumentation.js. As you can see, the instrumentation file with the register API allows users to tap into the Next.js server lifecycle to monitor performance, track the source of errors, and deeply integrate with observability libraries like OpenTelemetry. Really cool that Next.js has support for this out of the box now. And you can see they've even collaborated with Sentry here on designing a new on-error request hook that adds in important context about all the errors thrown on the server. And it also reports the errors to your favorite observability provider. I recommend checking out BetterStack, for example. Back at the features then, another really cool one I want to point out is they've made some improvements to self-hosting. So you can see here when self-hosting applications, you may need more control over the cache control directives. One common use case here is controlling the stale while revalidate period. You can see they've gone ahead and added an expire time in the next configuration. It was previously an experimental option, but they've also updated the default value to 1 year, ensuring that most CDNs fully apply the stale while revalidate semantics as intended. It's really nice to see they're paying more attention to being able to self-host Next.js here, as that has been a pain point for some developers. The last cool one I want to point out actually relates to a video I did on this channel about how server actions could leak code. As you can see, they've gone ahead and enhanced the security for server actions here, which is really cool to see. It says even if a server action or utility function is not imported elsewhere in your code, it's still publicly accessible HTTP endpoint. While this behavior is technically correct, it can lead to unintentional exposure of such functions. As I said, I did a video on this, so go ahead and check that out. Also subscribe if you want more of these. But as you can see, they've improved security here by enabling dead code elimination, and they've also set up secure action IDs. So Next.js now creates unguessable, non-deterministic IDs to allow the client to reference and call the server action. These IDs are periodically recalculated between builds for enhanced security. But it is worth pointing out though, you should still treat server actions as public HTTP endpoints, and you can go ahead and learn more about securing them here as well. Done. Next.js 15 is another upgrade to the developer experience of Next.js, bringing some great new features. Now, interestingly, they dropped Next.js 15 before the conference, which is today, so be sure to subscribe to see what they announced there. If you want some shiny new sidebars for your apps though, go ahead and watch this video. Otherwise, check out the one that YouTube thinks you'll like. As always, thank you very much for watching, and happy coding.